Queridos colegas, por favor, os pido que vayáis.
Dear colleagues, please take your seats. We must begin. We have a web streaming service which has already started. The world is watching, and we cannot delay further. If someone could please tell those colleagues who are in the doorway to please come inside, we would appreciate it. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to those of you who are watching the webcast. My name is Sergio Alvarez, and I am the outgoing coordinator, of the Private Market Sector Committee in AIC. We have quite a bit of work. We have 3 working languages, English, Spanish, and French, and there will be interpretation into English, and that is the channel that is going out on these streaming. And we thank the colleagues who are offering their help and their voices, and I am sure that they're going to do extraordinary work. The idea of speaking on the future of the profession is something that we have been talking about in the private sector for some time now. And we got in contact with colleagues in the White House who attended an open-ended discussion in Cartagena. This was coordinated by Eduardo Cajane, who is sitting on my right-hand side. And we thus asked Eduardo to try to think and to look a bit into the future about what our profession is going to have to deal with in years to come. There are a number of documents included in the AIC newsletter. It is on page 21. It is an introduction to the debate, and it also includes a summary of the discussion in Cartagena. I invite you to look at it. PRIMS is very pleased and thankful that it has been invited to organize this or chair this general debate, among other reasons because we think that it will give a breath of fresh air. The fact that we will be able to think together about the future of the profession, we will be able to look at the challenges that we face as a profession, and we will be able to take on the effort to do so, an effort where we as a profession will be in 20 or 30 years. That is what we will be able to look at. I will introduce the different speakers as we come to the different panels. We have opened this discussion to the world of interpreters, to material providers, students, and all of the stakeholders in the profession, so that they can look at the debate on the web stream. This is something that the PRIMS sector, the private market sector, asked for, and which the executive committee agreed to, and which we are thankful for. We strongly believe that we cannot talk about the future of the profession behind closed doors. We also wanted to allow for committees and groups that are part of AIC to take part in the discussion, because they really are the life pulse of the organization, and thus will be able to give us their view on the future of the profession. I'm sure that you looked at the agenda at the entry, and you can also look at it on the internet. It was something that we posted on Facebook as well. The schedule of the discussion, which is broken down into 3 panels. Every panel will last an hour. It will be equally divided between presentations and discussions, questions and answers from the floor. We're going to spend an hour on each panel, and that is what we have to do. Otherwise, we wouldn't have enough time to give the floor to colleagues. I will start by giving the floor to Eduardo Cajane, who's the keynote speaker.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I am very pleased by the trust that PRIMS and then the executive committee entrusted in me to organize this cross-cutting debate of the utmost importance, and I very humbly accepted, very much aware of the colossal task that we are facing. I do not have answers. That is not why I decided to do that, but rather to request your help in order to receive responses about how we can move this ship forward. So this debate is not just difficult, but it is of the utmost importance. In fact, it starts here, and it may be a new beginning. It is difficult, but it must be finished eventually, and we are all called upon to start analyzing and reviewing the current state of play and also to adopt hardy decisions. Faced with a debate of this dimension, we have to be pragmatic on one hand, but on the other hand, we have to have a certain vision. I would like to invite all of you, as I invite myself, to look at the horizon, to widen your horizons, to look where it is difficult to see what is going on, not what is on the agenda in the day-to-day business of the association. That is something we've been doing for many years. We have to move beyond that, and we have to move beyond ourselves, and to also look at the profession that we are going to hand down to future generations. In a world where times will be trying, we will have to take very foundational decisions for the profession which is changing right in front of our eyes. A profession which is emerging into new spaces, and where we will have to try to change the way we practice the profession. There will be new modalities for profession. There is community interpreting, humanitarian interpreting, public services interpreting, new types of media interpreting. There are new types of interpreting which we will be called upon to practice, but which do not exist yet. I think that we have really important decisions vis-a-vis training. We will have to adapt to a very uncertain future, and we will have to train for interpreting modalities which have yet to be defined, which perhaps do not even exist, and where we will also have to cooperate with universities in order to lay down definitions. And this is also something which we must absolutely do in our own surroundings. We cannot only engage in navel gazing. We have to look beyond the text that we have. We have to not just look at the language that we offer, but think that we are offering a service to society. We have to look at the society that we are in. We have to look at technology. We have to look at globalization. I will delve into greater depth on those issues in my second presentation. This is the opening presentation. We have to stop thinking that, oh, our profession is not going to change that much. Technology is not going to affect our profession. And I would just like to say that this is not necessarily the case. A lot of professions say this. We are facing huge challenges in our society in the relationship between work and capital, where there will be less and less work and more capital. In the relationship between capital and technology, where capital is going to flow towards those who have technological savvy. That is going to also change regarding the the relationship between work and sustenance. Work will not necessarily be the only way to earn a living. There's this idea of basic universal income. This is something that has been talked about in universities for some time now. There are huge changes in society which will affect our profession. The ILO General Secretary Guy Ryder, at the beginning of this year, launched an initiative on the future of work. The paradigm shift is so extreme regarding work that the ILO, in its 100th year anniversary, has this as the main subjects. PRIMS also decided that this was a subject that we were going to deal with, and we were going to deal with courageously. We are not being asked to reinvent the wheel, but we can look in our surroundings, and we can avail ourselves of the invitation from the ILO to look at this and look at this issue together if we want to take a pragmatic approach. And we can also hear from the coordinator of the Future of Work initiative in the ILO, who will speak to us in a video. I'm not going to go on extensively over what you already know, but I am going to talk about what we are going to talk about, and I'm going to launch the challenge once again. Let us broaden our horizons. Stop talking about administration. Thank you for listening.
Muchas gracias, Eduardo.
Thank you, Eduardo. Everyone is here except for Maria Luz Vega, who sent her video, is the coordinator of the Future Work Initiative in the ILO that Eduardo referred to. She would have liked to be here with us today, but due to time constraints, she was not able to do so. That being said, she thought it was a good idea to be here because we are very much interested in what she had to say, and she's interested in working with us even after this assembly. So she sent us her statement on video. We will hear from Andrew Constable afterwards, who will speak on behalf of the Staff Interpreters Committee, the CDP, and instead of Tomasz Omaczynski, on behalf of the agreement sectors, those sectors that have with organizations that have agreements with AIC. You will speak, and then we will hear from Jean-Pierre Alain. We will first see the video with Ms. Vega, please.
Buenos días.
Good morning. I would like to first and foremost thank you for the invitation and apologize for not being here due to unforeseen conditions. I had to travel for work and I couldn't be with you, but I wanted to give the ILO's take on the study that we are preparing, because the ILO is at the heart of the United Nations. It is at the heart of the interest that many of you have in your work, and we thought it was essential to participate and be part of your encounter. We can have no doubt that we are going through uncertain times where there is a lot of violence, in fact, regarding the future. We are faced with a number of questions, a number of sources of uncertainty which were caused over the past 30 years. But this is not unprecedented. It is particularly because this change has been so quick that it is challenging, but the world continues to turn, and it is turning faster and faster, and this is perhaps what we are scared by and what leads to even more questions. There have been crises, work-related crises. All of us are thinking of the same thing. The STEAM movement the machines were burned, but we are all doing much better thanks to machines existing and not remaining with the Luddites. Also, the creation of electricity allowed for more people to access work, but it also led to, for the first time, for there to be 24-hour work. This led to new problems. And beyond that, every technological change led to dealing with more and more complicated situations. And beyond that, we have gone through crises which were quite complicated and which also led to more fears and insecurities. Over the past 100 years, particularly the last, in the 50s and 53, that was the first oil crisis, which had the same ingredients that we have in the crisis today: energy, ecology, and demographics for the first time ever. For the first time, people thought that we had to look at the population growths and drops. In years after that, the computers started to become common. The ILO has existed for many years now, and in 1963 and 1964, there are documents where it is made clear that technology changes do not just affect the work situation in the way that humans tend to think. What we are seeing now is that we are facing a new decade. We are on the eve of 2020. We are almost at the 100th year anniversary of the ILO. And what is the world that we are facing? Well, we are facing a world with job deficits, which particularly affects the youngest people and also young adults. Also, we see no apparent solution. We see that there are offshore phenomena, and we are also seeing issues with job creation and uncertainty. At the same time, there are new formula in new sectors which are quite interesting and also quite useful to humanity, such as the clean economy, the green economy, the more participative economy, new types of jobs. Employment is changing. It's is destroyed. It is built again. We have new types of jobs. We have new types of contracts, new types of platforms, the e-economy. We also have intermittent contracts. We have new types of service provision, new types of labor relations. But this also gives us a certain deal of flexibility. Someone can work at home with a certain deal of flexibility and also be able to use their different abilities and use their time better. The idea of work itself seems to be changing. Perhaps the idea is, are we going to work or not work? This is the dilemma. This is the question. Are we going to work? What type of work? On one hand, that 24/7 society can be quite risky. Technology can make our lives easier, but it can also make it so that we are stuck in front of a machine for those 24/7 hours. And finally, we have to look at what ideas can we manage? How are we going to deal with the world itself? How are we going to manage that shift, particularly given the fact that it is so quick? We also said that we would look at the problem of interpreters, and I think that we are quite scared given the changes that technology can pose, and I think that that is justifiable, but we also have to relativize that fear. When we talk about the future of work, we cannot just limit it to technology. That would be a mistake. That would be a huge mistake, and it makes no sense because the world can become more humane. But technology will help the world of translation and interpreting, and it will allow for work to change. What we are seeing is that machines can interpret, but what kind of interpretation? There are cash machines which are being created, for example, where a human being will have to be there to support the machine. We've seen that cash machines, which have been working for decades, will become humane again. People will be able to use distance work, and distance interpreting thus will be easier with less space, greater time, and will allow for flexibility, and it might even bring down cost and allow for interpreting to take place over greater distance. And the human factor in interpreting, just as in any other economic sector, is fundamental. And this will allow for us to look at the transformation of the interpreting world. The work for interpreters is a human job, just like any other jobs. It is going to change, but it is not going to disappear. I would like to recall an anecdote, something that was brought up in the translation world, in a book that was called The Human Capacity of to change the meaning of what can be done. And this is what we are looking at. What our mind can do is not something that a machine can do right now. Given that there are time constraints, I would just like to say, what are the necessary actions, or what could be the necessary actions to deal with this future?
The future, which no doubt is a challenge. Firstly, with what you are doing, anticipate, sort of looking at the situation, studying it, where we're at, what are the risks and advantages and needs. Furthermore, in this sense, and bearing in mind that an important change is taking place concerning the dynamics of the interpretation sector, we'll have to establish competencies and skills which you will have to develop. What are the market possibilities? And adapt these skills in new training systems. I know that you have been discussing issues like interpretation in fields of immigration assistance, social welfare, necessarily in a globalized world, especially in refugee camps, for instance. We're talking of a different kind of interpreting, which can make use of platforms. So we're talking of a very different kind of interpreting, which will be more dynamic, perhaps even done at a distance, but more accessible in a sense. You'll have to develop your relationship with these machines which will facilitate interpreting and which will make our daily life easier. What will be their added value? In what sense will the human being create this added value to the machines? And we'll have to look at the criteria to lessen the impact of automation and see what necessary legislation might have to come on stream to be able to attenuate the possible job losses or destruction of professional employment. We'll have to look at an action plan, look at priorities, and we'll have to labor relations and negotiations with unions. I know that there are international associations of interpreters which have considerable strength and value. The possibility of collective bargaining, of collective dialogue is essential. But for that, we have to carry out proper and robust analysis, being fully mindful of necessary analysis. And looking at what is strictly necessary. We have to find solutions to perhaps heal wounds there will be wounded, even deaths, i.e. posts which will be lost. That does not necessarily involve the death of human beings who lie behind the needs. The ILO, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary next year, in 2019, will have as one of its key tenets social justice. And your job, your work interpreting, is essential in that respect. And you have been participating in this world peace, in this social peace, which would not have been possible if you had not been there. Social justice will also need your help and assistance and cooperation, and we'll have to bear in mind the basic principles of ILO to ensure that work never becomes a mere commodity. And again, I'd like to conclude by regretting my absence with you, absence I cannot be with you, and I hope you have a good time in Valencia, and we'll be there, always ready to help you and at your service. Thank you.